has left me, and I decided to, instead of coming up with something, I was going to deal with Matthew 24 a little bit more. Most of you are with me. Are we up here? Yeah, we are. On Wednesday night. What? Mic not working. Hello. Oh, now it does. So we were studying. We've been studying for a while now in Matthew 24, and so I'm going to continue that. Let me see where I want to start. I want to talk about the destruction of Jerusalem, especially. I like this picture. It is a picture, and it's just awful. It's just, to me, it's one of the most terrible ones of the artist's rendering of the destruction of the temple. I assume you recognize what this structure is. That's the altar of burnt offering. Here's the ramp that led up to it. And so the temple itself would have been in the background. You can see him carrying off. Probably my niece Wayne, you told me my pointer is not working. This is the altar of burnt offering and the ramp that led up to it. And you can see him here carrying off the candelabra, the 7-branch lampstand. But it's just a terrible picture. And so this morning I want to deal with how complete was the destruction. In Matthew 23, where we just studied, he says, "Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered together thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth till you shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." Jesus said in Matthew 24, Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. The Romans, when they took the city, destroyed it. This picture here is, which I'm going to look at, is a map of Aelia Capitolina. The city lay in ruins, completely destroyed, with no one allowed to live there. A Roman legion was quartered there in this area. I'll show you a video of some of this a little later. This was the 10th legion, the Fretensis legion, that was quartered here permanently for a century or more. The only thing left of Jerusalem were these 1, 2, 3 towers that were left there by the Romans to indicate what they had accomplished, how great the city had been that they tore down. It was torn down. This was the Temple Mount. Over here is what's known as the Wailing Wall. And this was no part of the building other than the floor. It was just the floor. And they took it down completely. And in building this was about this city was built about 130, we'll say, A.D. I still say A.D. instead of C.E., which is the modern way to say it, I guess. We don't want to be religious about this. What? What? No, okay, I'll get my pointer. All right. This is a Temple Mount. They erected, they believe, they know there was a temple of Jupiter. They don't know it was here or there, but there were 2 enormous statues, one of the Emperor Hadrian, and another one of the Roman gods, I can't remember who. But this is the Wailing Wall over here. And when Herod wanted to build the temple, it wasn't the hill was not big enough for what he wanted to build. This area right here would have been I can't think of the name. The previous temple, which I'll think of in a little bit, which was too small. They felt it was too small for what Herod wanted to do. So, as I told you earlier, he hired 1,000 priests to build his temple. That is gone. There's nothing there. And for 40, 50 years, whatever, from 70 A.D. to 130, there was nobody lived here. It just wasn't here. The only people here were this Roman legion quartered in a section of the city over here. I mentioned, I'll show you again, these 3 towers were the only thing of the situation in Jerusalem that was left. And this, you're going to see this. Romans called their main streets, and they built cities cardos. And this was the main street over here when Hadrian rebuilt the temple. And this was a secondary street coming down through here. If you go to Jerusalem today, there is nothing left, unless you dig down very deep, of the city of Jerusalem that was known in the Bible. This Hippicus Tower, I think it's Hippicus, is not there anymore. They call it now the Tower of David, and the only thing that's left of original Jerusalem above ground is sort of the base of that Tower of David. The tower itself was torn down. If you see what looks like ancient buildings, they are from, there are a few of them are from Aelia Capitolina. Most of them are from the Byzantine period. And, you know, when you go into old Jerusalem, you're not talking about the Bible period. You're talking about the Byzantine period, the Christian period. Christians were allowed back in the city about 300 or 400. But there were no Jews here in Aelia Capitolina. It was called Aelia Capitolina for 200 or 300 years. Now think about that. You know, we say these things and it sounds like, you know, like last year. as long as the United States has been a country, this was a Gentile city. Aelia Capitolina. No Jews were allowed there until the Emperor Constantine, about whatever year, 300. And then Christians began coming back. They built, Constantine built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and a couple of others. He built churches there. For instance, I think it's the Temple of Aphrodite that they built. Here it is, on what they thought was the tomb of Jesus, where his tomb was. And they didn't leave anything. They built this pagan palace there, pagan castle there, pagan temple. And then as Constantine came in, he tore that down and built the church. I think the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is right there. And they dug down, and there were, of course, some graves down there, caves where there were bodies. And it just so happened they found the one that Jesus was in magically. How they knew that, how they know that, you'll never know. It makes a nice talking point. But that's one thing people don't realize. There's nothing there. Nothing from the New Testament period. This Temple Mount was taken down, and I'll show you a little bit more about it. I'm talking too much. This is what Josephus said about it. By the way, this is the Arch of Titus in Rome, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. It was built in about 81 AD, which was 10 years after, by Titus's brother, Domitian, to honor his brother, and the victory over the Jews. I'll tell you a little bit more about this. Here's what, come on, let's go. As soon as the army had no more people to slay or plunder, because there remained none to be the objects of their fury. These people, this was a 5-month battle to take Jerusalem, which unfortunately I'll show you eventually. But it was just an ordeal. The Romans were furious. They would not have spared any had there remained any work to be done. Caesar gave orders that they should now that's Titus, should now demolish the entire city and temple, but should leave as many of the towers standing as were of the greatest eminency, that is, Phasaelus, Hippicus, and Miriam. This wall was spared in order to demonstrate, afford a camp for such as were to lean in garrison, as were towers also spared, in order to demonstrate to posterity what kind of a city it was and how well fortified, which the Roman valor had subdued. But for all the rest of the wall, it was so thoroughly laid even with the ground, that by those who dug it up to the foundation, that there was left nothing to make those that came thither believe that it had even been inhabited. They tore it down. Now, when they built this Aelia Capitolina, they used some of the rubble from the buildings, and there is some rubble around what would have been the temple that still archaeologists love to dig up. But Josephus says that in taking Jerusalem, there were 1.1 million people killed. The streets were so full of bodies you couldn't get through them. The blood was everywhere. And there were 550,000 enslaved. During that period, you could buy a slave in the slave markets for what would essentially be pennies. There were so many of them. Silva was appointed as the general. He was the commander of the 10th Legion. The 10th Legion, after the destruction of Jerusalem, after it was taken, was sent to deal with Masada. which I don't know if you've ever seen what they did at Masada. It was pretty incredible. Masada stands what looks to be several hundred feet high, in that it's the highest plateau in the Dead Sea area. And they built a dirt wall road all the way up to Masada. Did you go to Masada? That legion, roughly, maybe 10,000 men, they built it in 3 months, I think, if I remember correctly. And then pushed a siege tower up it in order to take Masada. And when they got in, they discovered there were 980 bodies. They all killed themselves, the defenders, which the Israelis now use as their swearing-in ceremony for a lot of their troops to indicate whatever they want to indicate. In 71 A.D., Vespasian, who had become emperor, gave a triumph to his son Titus, himself and his son. You have to realize about Vespasian and Titus they were not of the Julian dynasty from Caesar, and they were, pardon the expression, lower class. Now that doesn't mean that they were really lower class. They weren't plebs. They were sort of middle class, if you will, and not of the senatorial class. And so they gave themselves this enormous triumph. The Israelites would have been traipsed through the city. The amazing thing is Josephus, who was a Jew and had been, I'll show you where he served here if I'll quit talking long enough to show you. Josephus had been a commander during the Roman assault. His was one of the first cities taken. Long story, but anyway. They gave themselves this triumph, and this arch, if you've been in Rome, and perhaps you've seen pictures of it, she shows pictures of Roman soldiers carrying away the altar of incense and carrying away the candelabra. They were from the equestrian class, and when Titus died, the position of emperor was taken over by his brother Domitian in 81 A.D. And Domitian persecuted Christians quite a bit, and he really continued to persecute the Jews during his reign. There was another revolution by the Jews called the Kitos War that was mostly in North Africa and Alexandria, and there were hundreds of thousands of Jews killed during that. This is a quote from Clark's commentary. He says, "The very foundations of the city were dug up according to Roman custom." They did the same thing in Carthage. Remember, when they defeated Carthage, they took it down to dirt and sowed it with salt. So nothing was going to grow there or be built there. On the 9th day of the month Ab, fatal for vengeance, the wicked Turnus Rufus of the children of Edom plowed up the temple and the places round about it, that the saying might be fulfilled, Zion shall be plowed as a field. Now this happened in the later on. Let me go. This is quoted in Micah 3 in verse 12. "Therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places of the forest." It was prophesied. It's quoted again in Jeremiah 26. Micah the Morashite prophesied in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and spake to all the people of Judah, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Zion shall be plowed like a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places of Israel. This Turnus Rufus is reviled by the Jews. More level-headed historians don't revile him quite so bad because he plowed up the city. He found, when they got to this is during the, I've forgotten my name, but during the rebellion under Hadrian, Turnus Rufus was the governor. And they found one man hiding in a cave somewhere around the Temple Mount. And so Turnus Rufus, Turnus is an insult, by the way, used by the Jews. His name was Terentius, I think. But he plowed the field down to try to discover if there were any more hiding places for the Jews on that Temple Mount. So, was it destroyed? Oh, yeah. All that was left was the foundation of that plateau that Herod built, which was not any part of the temple itself. The Jewish Encyclopedia says he was governor of Judea in the 1st century of the Common Era. Tyrannius, a name which would correspond to the Jewish tradition, Rufus was governor at the time of the outbreak of the Bar Kokhba War. The course of the struggle is described, well, I'm reading too much. He took a prominent part in the conflict, as appears from the works of Eusebius. He was unable to withstand the vigorous onslaught of the Jews, so that Publius Marcellus, the governor of Syria, and later Julius Severus, the most prominent Roman general of the time, had to be sent against them. Rufus is not mentioned again until the suppression of the insurrection, when it is said by Eusebius that on the plea of martial law he cleared the land of the Jews of its inhabitants. As a result of that Bar Kokhba rebellion, no Jew could live in Jerusalem. Couldn't live there. They threw them out for 200 years. Finally, when Constantine and other Christians began to move in, it became a Christian city, the Jews began to come back. It says his clearing the land and plowing up the temple was an insult to Judaism that left a deep impression on the minds of the survivors. The plowing of the Temple Mount, which is expressly designated as the deed of Rufus by Jerome. And so forth. He also, this Turnus Rufus, also killed Rabbi Akiva, who was one of the 3 or 4 famous rabbis of the Jews during that period. All right, we're going to move on, I think. All right. Come on. This is a brief video of what this Aelia Capitolina was. And I think I'm going to have to move to this side. Have we got sound up there, Daryl? This is brief. I won't trouble you too long about it. But let me get my pointer here. This is going to be a video in a minute, but this is where the 10th Legion, where's my mic? This area, come on, does it show up there? Nope. Gonna have to move up, I think. Yeah. You can see. Let me find something. Have I got something? No, I moved to this side, I can do this. I'm not used to this sort of thing. On my computer at home, these monitors are a lot closer to one another. This is the camp of the 10th Legion, Fretensis, and these are those 3 towers I mentioned to you. This is the Temple Mount. It was just a platform. There wasn't anything there when they started building. These buildings also were associated with the 10th Legion. But this was Aelia Capitolina they completely rebuilt. Let me see if I can get that going. Okay.
The two decisive events in the Jewish-Roman War, which put an end to the first Jewish uprising against the empire, were the siege and capture of Jerusalem by Titus's legions in 70 CE. This episode was described in great detail by the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who was present during these events. To avoid the natural obstacles formed by the deep valleys to the west, south, and east, the Roman army launched their attack against the northern wall of the city. On 24th of July 70 CE, the fortress of Antonia fell. On the 10th of August, the Romans destroyed the northwest porticos, linking the fortress to the temple. On the 30th of August, the sanctuary was burned down, and the whole city was razed to the ground. The walls were also destroyed, with the exception of the 3 towers constructed by Herod. For the following half-century, Jerusalem was not repopulated. The city was placed under surveillance by the Roman army's Legio Exfratensis, which set up camp on Mount Zion, and perhaps also south of Temple Mount. Built out of wood, this camp left no archaeological traces. However, numerous tiles and bricks stamped with the legion's emblems attest to its long-time presence at this site. In 129 CE, Emperor Hadrian decided to rebuild Jerusalem and therein establish a Roman colony named Aelia Capitolina. This decision led to the last major revolt by the Jews against Rome, also known as the Bar Kokhba Revolt, which took place between 132 and 135. Following this revolt, the emperor definitively banished the Jewish population from the city. Aelia Capitolina was built using the classic octagonal plan for Roman cities. It's still possible to see traces of the 2 north-south cardos in the old city. The Cardo Maximus ran from the north gate, known as the Gate of the Column, and the second Cardo corresponds to the current Al-Wad Street. The Decumanus Maximus ran from east to west along what is now King David Street and established the boundary between the military and civil sections of the city. Roman roads crisscrossed a much reduced urban area compared with the city's layout under Herod, and the city walls were not rebuilt, surely due to the presence of the 10th Legion. During the period of the Roman colony, Judaism was replaced by pagan beliefs. A temple dedicated to Jupiter Capitolium was built either on the north side of the Forum, possibly on the site of today's Muristan, or on Temple Mount, according to testimony indicating that 2 giant imperial statues were once erected there. Another hypothesis suggests that the Acropolis of Temple Mount was abandoned. In any event, we know that the ruins of Herod's temple were used as a quarry for the construction of other buildings, and that at least part of the former esplanade was ploughed and used as farmland. According to the only known reference to monuments in the Roman Aelia, found in a Byzantine chronicle, the city contained all the classical elements of Roman cities: baths, a circus, markets, commercial arcades, and even a theatre, though their exact position remains unknown. In 2017, a small semicircular Odeon was found during subterranean excavations west of the Wailing Wall, and appears to date from this period. The arch known as Ecce Homo, located north of the esplanade, is one of the rare monuments from this period still standing today. However, we do not know whether it was truly an entrance gate on the edge of the city, or rather a symbolic gate in a city without walls. In any event, Aelia Capitolina was indeed a Roman city which would not be called Jerusalem again until the 4th century, when the city was Christianized for the first time, following the conversion of Emperor Constantine.
All right, that was relatively painless. Get back out of this. There. Anyway, I did all that, unfortunately, or fortunately. Let me get back here where I want to be. To come back to Matthew 24. In the first couple of verses, Jesus said, "See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." God was going to destroy this city completely. And yes. Oh, my microphone. There shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. I wanted you to see that happened. They didn't just defeat the population of Jerusalem. They wiped this city out. And it was never called Jerusalem again for over 300 years, when they came back and renamed the city Jerusalem as the Christians began to move in. I'm going to try, that's one of the things that takes me so long studying Matthew 24. I do like studying history. And Jesus makes a number of historical prophecies about this period. And I have done, and in the course of this study we'll do more to show you that those prophecies came stunningly true about this. But this is just sort of the first one. I've got a long video of, by the way, just as an aside, I'm not going to be here Wednesday night, Lord willing. Alan talked about that expression last week. And so if there's a volunteer who would like to teach class Wednesday night, maybe you could speak to me after class, and we'll see how we go. Anyway, it's a long video. We're not going to watch all of it. It's fairly lengthy, about the Romans taking Jerusalem. And I thought it might be interesting to you to notice how hard the Jews fought to maintain it. And then we'll, as we proceed to study into Matthew 24, we'll probably watch clips of it or portions of it. Come on. Get out here. You won't let me out, will you? That's confounding. Let's see. There we go. But I thought that we'd maybe, since it is so long, I thought that we might get started on it in this last few minutes of our class tonight, or today. And then we'll watch clips of it from time to time through the course of this study. And I'll probably sit with you and watch this myself. I don't think, unless I need to stop it to point out some brilliant point.
Deep breaths.
I'm sorry. There's commercials in this. So if there's any ED ads or adult diaper ads or whatever, just, okay, I'm too cheap to spend. Daryl said I could subscribe for $13 a month, but I don't do this very much. And I don't want to spend $13 a month. So you'll just have to ignore the ads the same way I do when I look at YouTube generally. Let me make sure where I am. Nope. Let me go back here. Yeah, okay.
You're never gonna guess what happened. Dex put a hit on me. I took a bullet. I died.
All right,
The siege of Jerusalem.
all right, all right, all right, we're ready. There we go. Nope, gotta go up here. Gotta go up there. Where is it? That's one of my problems, is figuring out how to get up there. You're up there. There we go. Let's get something moving. Just, I'm sorry. These things confound me. There.
Everyone's here for me!
Shingles doesn't care, but Shingrix protects. Only Shingrix has proven over 90% effective. Shingrix is a vaccine used to prevent shingles in adults 50 years and older. Shingrix doesn't protect everyone. It isn't for those with severe allergic reactions to its...
The siege of Jerusalem was a massive military endeavor, the likes of which had not been seen since the fall of Carthage 2 centuries earlier. Starting in April of 70 AD and lasting nearly 5 months, the battle would be a brutal, no-holds-barred brawl fought over every inch of the city. At stake was the success of the Great Revolt in Judea and the survival of the Jewish people. Roman involvement in Judea first began in 63 BC when Pompey the Great was drawn into a Jewish civil war and eventually seized Jerusalem. However, the region saw much turbulence during the final years of the Republic and was taken over by the Parthians, before legions returned to install the puppet King Herod. Eventually, a series of procurators oversaw Judea, but these largely lacked the competency or military power to impose order. Roman authority was highly dependent on local elites who themselves often lacked the confidence or respect of the Jewish people. On top of this, the population of Judea was divided across lines of class, ethnic, and religious divisions. As a result, the region was highly unstable. Revolutions seemed perpetually around the corner.
So right when I thought Mom would start taking it easy with her osteoporosis, boom! We moved to this cool new place in the city.
If you have postmenopausal osteoporosis and are at high risk for fracture, Evenity can help you rapidly build new bone in just 12 months. Evenity is the only bone builder.
In May of 66 AD, rioting amongst the people was met by the heavy-handed overreaction of the Roman procurator Florus, who only further incensed the situation by plundering southwest Jerusalem and killing 3,600 people. As the situation escalated, reinforcements soon arrived from Caesarea, only to be driven out by a rebellion that now spread to the entire region. Jerusalem was taken by Jewish rebels, while Roman strongholds were eliminated in Judea and Perea. Roman efforts to combat the uprising were led by Vespasian and his son Titus, under orders from the Emperor Nero. The campaign season of 67 AD saw Vespasian advance south from Antioch and focus his efforts on subduing Galilee. Field battles were virtually unheard of, given the huge advantage the Romans held, and most of the fighting was concentrated around fortifications. This resulted in particularly brutal treatment of any populations which did not submit immediately. Rome often acted.
Okay, I'm going to stop this just to show you this. This is Jotapata, the city of Jotapata, which is where Josephus was made commander of. Josephus had been to Rome, he had met Nero, he was very much Hellenistic, but he was also loyal, and the Jewish rebels had made him commander in Jotapata, which was a fairly well-armed city, small city. It took the Romans about 6 weeks to take Jotapata, and Josephus and 90 of his men escaped and were hiding in a cave. And anyway, to make a long story short, since they were doomed, Josephus knew they were doomed. The Roman army was roughly 60 to 80,000 trained troops, the best the world had right then. And he knew they were going to wipe this place out. So anyway, he was not exactly, somehow or another, they created the notion that they were going to kill themselves rather than be killed by the Romans. And so they came up with a gambling thing, sort of tossing, the equivalent of tossing a coin, you and a buddy. And if you won, you killed him. And then you do it again. Somehow or another, out of this situation, lo and behold, Josephus survived. He was one out of the 90 who lived, and he and the guy who was supposed to kill him, he talked him into not killing him, and they both lived, so they quit the game at that point. But he was a client, really, of Titus. He gave up to the Romans. Titus gave him tremendous privileges. He viewed the entire war. You can read about it. He glorifies, I think he glorifies the Jews as a sort of a means to redeem himself in Jewish eyes. The Jews hated him. And he also glorifies Titus. So as you read his books, you might keep that in mind. But it's the best history of this period. If you get a chance to read Josephus, it really is pretty incredible. But anyway, that's where he was. What time is it? Okay, we're going to get about 4 more minutes of this, and then we'll need to move on. Let me see. Where am I up here? Here we go.
Particularly strict to make a point. During the 68 AD offensive in Judea, for instance, cities downstream of the Roman army learned of their approach not by messengers, but by the arrival of bodies floating down the Jordan River. The campaign ground to a halt with the news of Nero's death. The anarchy that followed was known as the Year of Four Emperors and included a bid for power by Vespasian on July 1st, 69 AD. By the summer of 70 AD, he had come out the victor and set sail for Rome to claim his prize. Titus was left in command of the Judean campaign with instructions to put an end to the Jewish uprising.
Okay, we're going to stop right there. What he just talked about in 69 AD, eventually we're going to study about the Year of the Four Emperors a little bit. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but Vespasian, this was going on. They had 4 successive emperors in the same year, taking on after the death of Nero. A couple of them, one of them killed himself, another one was killed, and so forth. And finally, they settled. I'll tell you later. There were various generals from around the Roman Empire. And finally, they settled on Vespasian. That's what he's saying. And Vespasian, the battle in Judea really really stopped for a period of time, that year, while that was all being sorted out. And then the 4 legions that were with Vespasian declared him the emperor, and the folks in Rome said, you can come home. So he went home, turned it over to his son Titus, who was about, I think, 30 or 40 years old at this time. He went home to be emperor. Now, I'm telling you all that because I told you before, and I think it's still the truth, that when Gallus attacked, this chart doesn't talk about that. Gallus attacked Jerusalem. He was from Syria, took 30,000 men, circled Jerusalem, was defeated at a battle at Beth Horon, pretty bad, about 67 AD. And then they sent Vespasian and Titus in. Vespasian came directly to Palestine, and Titus came to Alexandria and brought 1 legion there. Vespasian had 2 legions with him, and there's a 4th. But during that period of time, while they're waiting to see how that situation in Rome developed, that's another period of time when perhaps the Christians might have escaped Jerusalem. So it's either going to be 67 or 69 AD that they had a chance to get out. Thank you. Oh.